Leadership isn't rank, it's not title, it's not authority. The youngest person in the office could be the real leader. The best leaders don't command, they don't control, they inspire. And if you think rescuing your team makes you a great leader, you might just be setting yourself up for failure.
So leaders are not by rank. The youngest person in the office could be the leader. It's not about directing people. It's about inspiring. People aren't interested in being the victim in your story. They are the heroes of their story. When we win, my team did it. When we lose, it was my fault, right? It was a lot easier to go from chocolate-covered raisins to doo-doo than it was from doo-doo back to chocolate-covered raisins.
Welcome to Ambition Aligned, the podcast that breaks down leadership, decision-making, and high performance. Here's the truth. Leadership isn't about rank. It's not about titles. And it's definitely not just about competence. The real key, influence. Today, we're cutting through the noise with Shannon McCullar, a former Coast Guard commanding officer turned executive coach. He's led teams in high-stake environments, navigating political minefields, and learned firsthand why leadership isn't about control, it's about trust. In this episode, we're exposing the biggest mistakes leaders can make, the shift from competence to influence, and the unexpected lesson that just may change how you lead. And yes, we're even going to talk about chocolate-covered raisins, power dynamics, and why sometimes the best move is letting others lead themselves. If you're ready to level up your leadership, hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if something in today's conversation resonates with you, drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your take.
So what are some issues that leaders are facing today? Yeah, I guess it depends on how you look at it. If you look at what issues are they having within themselves growing into leadership, or what issues are they having with, in the workforce, in the economy, in the industry that they're in. So I think if I look at what the leaders that I've seen struggle with most, there's kind of two things. There's they want to keep doing the last job they were doing, and that's a struggle for them, really understanding what's the new role about and how can they do that job. And they're trying very hard, but they're just trying to do their last job harder. Or there's this thing, I don't know if you've had children, but the terrible twos. So
Yeah.
the terrible twos are all about when a kid decides that they have their own free will. And so once they understand that they are separate from their mother and their father and they can do what they want, then all of a sudden they think they're responsible for everything. They think they make the wind blow and they move the curtain, and they can do whatever. And that's distressing, for a person, for a human. So I do see leaders sometimes hit that point in their career where they think, well, now that I'm, fill in the blank, I can do anything. And that's a tough spot to be in too. So from the other side, what sort of things are they running into in the workforce? It's, work from home, since COVID, there's so many great things about working from home, right? I think there's also some bad things about working from home. So that's a tough one. How do you, especially for young people, how do you ensure you're bringing them along when you've not had years of experience working with this person, And so anyway, am I getting at the answer to your question, Devin?
No, you're really hitting it. And I think what's an interesting perspective, and I'd be curious on is, as a commanding officer previously in the Coast Guard, did you have employees that were working remotely at the time, or was everyone in person? And if they were working remotely, how can people lead their teams when there is this remote environment?
Yeah. So not so much in the Coast Guard. I mean, I did have people that worked remotely from me, but they were still working in an office, theoretically. But when I left the Coast Guard, I left in 2020, and I moved over to Homeland Security, where I was in charge of financial systems for the department. That year, we were rolling out a brand new financial system to TSA. And so, everyone went home. So I have said before, and I believe that it is true, we would not have been successful with that rollout had we not all gone home. the amount of work that you could get done in that environment from, without having to move from office to office, without having to move from building to building. Everyone was expected to be present on the Zoom call or Teams call or whatever it was, and you could move from meeting to meeting in the press of a button, and you could get meetings all day. So it was overwhelming, and we burned some people out, but it was also we got a lot done. So it turned into, and this I've seen this before in my career, when people really believed in what they were doing and were committed to getting through a hard problem and getting to success. My job as a leader was really to make sure they weren't burning out. It wasn't to motivate them. It wasn't to get them on the phone or make sure they were doing their work. It was to make sure they were taking time for themselves and make sure they were, watching a funny show every now and then, trying to get some joy, get a little uplift into their life. So, uh, I know that it's changed a bit, and so, in that sprint there, it was critical for us. We could do training. We did all the training for all the people in TSA on this new system virtually. So,
Wow.
you know, it worked out. It we used it to our advantage, but, there are certainly drawbacks, and so learning how to manage those, was something, really big, and the people I worried about the most, honestly, were the long-term effects on the young people. So you've got these young kids that are in their, first or second job, and they don't get the conversation in the hall. They don't get the let's talk over the water cooler, one-on-one. It's uncomfortable for them to call me directly, and I would not intentionally make time to reach out to all of them. And so it was, um, how do you teach them what it is to be part of the team and teach them your values and the your I guess work ethic, the way you treat each other. It's much harder to do virtually. So I think that they were working on some plans to implement a more intentional way of bringing new people along in the virtual world. I guess it seems like a lot of people are coming back to work now. So maybe that will be overcome by events.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is still fascinating. There's this area right now where, and I didn't realize until you just mentioned it, you have a very unique perspective of there's some companies that are, hey, I'm full remote. Now we're seeing in the government, hey, I'm full, especially federal government, hey, full back to office.
I know.
But then there's a lot of companies like where I'm at, Google, it's hybrid, where you might have some people in some offices, some people are
Yeah.
remote,
Mhm.
and there's pros and cons to both, to any model. And so I'm curious, you being on both sides of it, what what were the biggest pros and what were the biggest cons you saw from the perspective of a leader?
Yeah. If I had a company that was large enough to implement a policy like this, it would be a hybrid model because there are benefits to those being home and not losing time driving into work and coming back. The space you can save by maybe only cycling through 25% of your workforce on any given day. You don't have to have 100% a space for 100% of your employees. So, I would do a hybrid. Certain days you would have teams in the office to take advantage of some of that face-to-face time, and then some days it would be better to work from home. How much of each would probably depend on the type of work you were doing. I think being isolated all the time is not good. They did some studies that showed people after having worked at home for an extended period of time were less happy than they were before when they were having to go into the office. As frustrating as people are, they beat the alternative. And so,
Yeah.
um, having that interaction is important, I think. So hybrid.
Hey, and for that hybrid model, I think what you're saying too is for the more junior folks, making sure they're in the same office with some more senior folks. Am I reading that
That's
right?
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. There's a part of mentorship and leadership that is innate. Maybe it's not something you do. It's just who you are. And for people to be able to see that and see it in each other is kind of irreplaceable in the virtual world. There's a way you carry yourself and the way, um, so leaders, by the way, are not by rank necessarily in my mind. Like youngest person in the office could be the leader,
Mm.
but that's harder to sense and to see, and an opportunity missed for that kid who, if they are uh, not able to um, demonstrate what they're capable of in that in real life.
Yeah, that makes sense. So positional authority, interestingly, isn't that big to you. Even that military,
Mm.
you get the sense otherwise, but to you, leadership's more about your ability
Yeah.
to change, or what? How would you define that?
Leadership is one of those very, very slippery words.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry,
I, yeah, it's
tough question.
so,
Yep.
I, I, uh, I remember the first time someone told me to be a leader, I was 9 years old, and my toy bowl football coach is yelling, "Be a leader!" I had no idea. I just tried harder. What are you supposed to do? And it seems like that feeling every time you get a new job. It's be a leader. Well, what is it to be a leader? You know, but in my mind, what I'm talking about when I say that kid could be a leader, it's just in the way, they carry themselves. It's in the way that they treat other people. It's in their attitude. People who lift other people up are leaders, and other people are drawn to that person because of the way they are. And so the way they choose to go about their daily lives in their professional world. So that influence, of is a form of leadership. It doesn't replace the responsibility of rank. The manager or the person who's in charge is in charge and is responsible, and they are the leader, in another sense of that word. But that doesn't mean that, you know, people without positional authority cannot also ex- express leadership.
Do you have any examples, or does anyone come to mind? You don't have to say names, but have any
Yeah,
stories that come to mind of where you saw that done really well? Maybe someone. I'm thinking of this too, where someone really junior comes
yeah,
in and you go look in the room and say, "Wow, that person's actually the leader here."
yeah, yeah. It's I think of a very young man that worked in my d- directorate in my last job. He was just the most positive person in all scenarios, very professional. He wore three-piece suits all the time and bow ties, and he was just a pleasant human. And and anyone with a problem, he was there to help, and he was volunteered to do everything. And so he just had this energy about him that made people want to be around him and made people want to try harder. And to me, that's the essence of real leadership. Is it's not about directing people, it's about inspiring people. And so a person can be inspiring regardless of their position in the organization.
Yeah. Wow. And it's fascinating tying that back to the remote environment. Did you ever observe anyone taking leadership in that kind of world, or how can someone thrive if they did?
Yeah, it's different. I'm sure that it is doable. But it would require a different kind of skill set. Someone who's again, it's how they make other people feel in that virtual environment. versus in the real world, in real life. So, and I guess that we shouldn't say that, because this is real. It just happens to be. It's just not in person. So, so how can a person come across as generous and capable and energetic and positive in a virtual environment? It's in the tone of their voice, it's in the way that they speak, it's in what they say and when they say it, and uh, the choices they make and how they treat other people that allow them to sort of express that leadership.
Well, it brings me an interesting thought. I'm curious if this happened to you, but I recognized something when I was in COVID. I went through COVID and I was managing a team at Google,
Mm.
and I recognized something similar to you. A lot of people said, people worked less during COVID. I didn't experience that. I actually had the opposite. People burned themselves out because you could work 24/7, and we were hyper productive with a small team. But I think one of the interesting aspects was when you actually met those people in person after working online, and you'd be like, "Oh, I thought this person was short, and they're actually really tall." I mean, and I was just making me think about, there is an element, I don't know if it's captured electronically yet, of finding personality. For some reason, finding personality in person is always a little different. And I think, to your point of those locker room conversations, or not locker room, like water cooler conversations, of cracking a joke after having a serious meeting can be a really element of someone's personality. I'm curious, did you have any experiences like that too?
Oh yeah. I remember one of this brilliant, brilliant woman that was our sort of an internal auditor. Um, and she was, I had my screens were always kind of above eye level, and she was always, so smart, so sharp, so on point. And I was used to looking up and hearing her speak. And when I met her, she's like this big, you know. Do you have a taller sister? But, yeah, no, it was interesting when you finally got to meet these people. They didn't the camera does things to you that makes you look different, for some people more than others.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, good. I'm not alone. I'm not
Yeah,
alone.
yeah.
So, Shane, I'm really curious. You're making some big transitions in your life, from
Mhm,
going
mhm,
from a very high level, to making a transition to the Department of Homeland Security, and now making this next transition to being an executive coach. Can you
mhm,
walk me through what's it
yeah,
like to? Not a lot of people make these big decisions when they already had such a successful career.
mhm.
So maybe walk me through what's going through your head with these decisions. And
Yeah, yeah, so the leadership, your professional growth, we talked about how at each level it's different, and you have to learn that level to move to the next level, and so the things that you have to do your job well and to be of use at each level are different. And so we've all got different things that our nature likes. There's things that give us energy, and there are things that take our energy. And when you as you go up the chain, I loved managing my team, sort of what they call the down and in. Now I know I didn't know this then. But as you get farther up the chain, you go more up and out, right? And so you're dealing
what do you
with
mean by that? Can you explain that a little bit? Sorry, that's really
yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah. So when you start off as a leader, you've got a small team. You've got a small division, and your job is to, you learn that job, and you learn that, well, it's not my job to be the boss. It's my job to bring all these amazing people that know how to rebuild a jet engine that I will never know. I bring them everything they need to do their job, right? That's the value that I add. I can't do their job, but I can get them the resources, I can get them the processes, and, I can give them what they need to do their job. And then I can take care of them. I can look out for them and fight for what's best for them, right? I just need to earn their trust, or, that's what I need to do. Well, as you go up, that group gets bigger. And in a way, it gets smaller because instead of managing a group of, 30 people, you've really got 6 leaders under you that you're managing, right? And so it's still kind of the same. But what you learn is you can inspire these people. They can really believe in what they're doing. They can give their whole heart and soul to it. They can achieve things that have never been done before. But you have a peer over here that wasn't happy about it, right? So for some
Mm,
reason, they said, "Oh, McCullar and that team will never do this," right? And now you do it, and they have to find a reason why you cheated, or it wasn't as good as everybody thought, or so as you go up, the your stakeholders are no longer your team. They're like everyone who can see this, who's involved with this, right? And as you get even higher up, it's one disgruntled congressional staffer can, snatch defeat from the jaws of victory just by with a bad word or two about the project that you just delivered. So you've got to make sure you become the chief storyteller at making sure that everyone understands what you're doing, that everyone is on board. Uh, and that was exhausting to but, even people who have really disappointed you, maybe have people you might not like, but this is not middle school. You don't get to only eat lunch with the people you think are cool, right? So you've got to go and find the people that are not rooting for you and make them feel like they're part of your success, right?
mm.
So that's exhausting. I'm a little bit introverted, and I have a hard time faking, you know, and so that became, one of the things that was really exhausting. And so being good at that level, some people are gifted like that, It's this as you I liked it where my competence was the most important thing, and the network was maybe down here. Well, as you get older, your competence becomes less and less important, and your network and your ability to influence people is really what you're there for. And so if you like that, man, you get all of it that you want. If you're an extrovert, and you get energy from dealing with folks, then that's your thing. If you want to make a spreadsheet or write a paper, you don't want to be an executive. So, I think that's what I mean by that. So up and out is more. These are not people in my chain of command, and so it's very intangible the connection they have to your success or failure. But you've got to see it, and you've got to engage with those people and bring them in, especially the naysayers. Ask them, why do you think this is going to fail? What do you think we should do differently? And have them feel like part of your success instead of, get them invested somehow. So that's what I mean by up.
Well, if you don't mind, one of the ways I can tell you already were a top class leader and people are lucky to listen to this is you didn't take. I asked you about leadership and you never mentioned when you're at the higher levels managing your team, right? Like you trusted your team. There's a degree of trust there. You had good
Yeah.
people. You weren't worried
Yeah.
about their jobs. It's more unblocking them so they could actually have an impact. And that's when you're going up and out, right? Am I reading that right? Like going up and out,
And
you're actually not managing or in the
yeah,
details anymore. It's just making sure
yeah,
your team
I
can
know.
move. Is that right?
Yeah. So I think of leadership and management as two different things. To be good at your job, you've got to have both. You can't if you're all one and not enough of the other, you're you're going to fail your people, or you're going to fail someone. And so, um, yeah, as you get more senior, you've got to give the people that you are leading the opportunity to manage their own teams. and so that gets into I don't need to do their job for them anymore. You know, I need to give them the systems. And at that point, really, by the end of my career, I wasn't giving them the systems. I was making sure they gave them, right? So what are the systems you're going to use to answer this? Where do we get those? How do we create them? Well, you can't just reinvent the wheel every time this problem comes up. How do we systematize that and set up boundaries for people? So I heard this in grad school, and it's one of my favorite sayings is that you can't be creative without boundaries. And it took me a while to get that. The teacher that told me that was a very flamboyant, colorful guy, and it was just overwhelming the whole show, of his class, and smartest one of the smartest guys I ever met, Steve Tomlinson, I think. But anyway, and it finally hit me. It's like, well, if I just said, Devin, be creative, it's too much, right? It's
Yeah.
too much. If I said, hey, Devin, write me a play, and it's 3 acts. It's gotta be an hour long, and it's in a high school on their stage. Their stage is set up as uh, an apartment in New York City, and you've got, 3 actors. You can start to create from that, right? You get a million ideas
Yeah.
already
Yeah,
just thinking
definitely.
about what you could do with that. So so you can't really be creative without boundaries. That's probably too absolute, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I imagine most people can't start businesses or have trouble starting their own businesses or being self-motivated, but they can hold down a job, right? They can hold down a
Right.
job. As soon as you give them something to do, people will get it done. But if you give them infinite possibilities, it's challenging. Or if you play chess, it's not fun with a 3-year-old who doesn't play by the rules, right? You're like, what are you doing? You can only play for so long. So, yeah,
Right. Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, very helpful. So is that what made that first transition from being at the top levels of leadership to going to the Homeland Security? Was wanting to try something different, get more in the technical details, or
Yeah.
what drove that? And
Well, so the decision to leave the Coast Guard, back in 2020,
yep,
we have an up or out system in the Coast Guard. So everyone, the commandant of the Coast Guard on down, you either, if you don't quit, you get fired. You age out the top. And
yeah,
so I aged out. So at 30 years, I was released on my own recognizance. I got paroled. So that's why I left. It was there was a time that was I had reached the end of my allotted time, and you have to
Mhm.
do that in the military to
Yeah.
give opportunities for those underneath you, to move up, and so uh, that is just the way it works.
Consulting audit is the same thing. Yeah, where they have timeout partners, so the next batch can come in, right? You
I
need
didn't
to
know
do it.
that. Really?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they have age limits, 50, 55. You got to get out so the next ones can come in, or else people are going to start throwing throwing
Yeah.
over the leadership. You can't let
Right.
everyone work at the bottom
Right.
too long, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know they did that. Yeah, that's the same thing.
Well, I guess I'm not I'm not questioning at all. 30 years and you had, and thank you for your service and you
Mhm.
accomplished so much there. Not everyone gets that far by any means. Why'd you take something else? Why'd you go to the Homeland Security? I guess what drove
Um,
you to take on that mission?
yeah. So I actually I worked through this book called "What Color Is Your Parachute." It's very difficult. Think of my whole professional career. Right, I really made one decision: join the Coast Guard. After that, almost all the decisions are made for you. Where are you going to live? What are you going to do? What are you going to wear? I mean, there's a book that says this is what you wear in every situation, and there's a store that only sells the stuff in that book. So it's it's about as easy as it can be, right? And so you can focus. So people find that smothering, But I found it liberating because so much stuff you don't have to think about. I can just think about doing the best job I can do at this task. So, whatever task they've given me. So when you get to now you're in your 50s, you've really got maybe 10 years of meaningful work that you want to do. You got one or two career choices that you can make, and you have zero experience making that choice. You know, it was it's very intimidating, it's very stressful. It's I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it really kind of weighs on you. So this book helped me. It walked you through a maybe not perfect, but a format for structuring those decisions. So I've got kind of an engineering mind. I like spreadsheets. I like logic. I don't mind making emotional choices. I know your choices are all emotional, but when there's too many factors, your emotions get confused. So it really helped me divide it down into, okay, where do I want to live? What are things that I like about a place to live? What are things I don't like about a place to live? What's my, what do I want to do? What kind of work have I enjoyed in the past? What have I not enjoyed in the past? And I literally wrote out this job. Like I'd love to be involved with, financial management, program management in the IT arena. And I would like to keep my career moving forward and, keep moving up. I like to be able to make a big difference on something that I care about. And all of those things just sort of fell in my lap. The person who uh, who had my job moved on, and they were looking for someone, and they called, and I was able to compare it in all the different, ways. I knew what I wanted, and so it fit me perfectly. So, I did have other opportunities. I thought about consulting. I thought about, contracting, I thought about a number of different things, but this one really fit everything that I wanted to do because I still wanted to have skin in the game. I didn't want to be an outside consultant just throwing, recommendations over the wall and, good luck. I really wanted to be producing those outcomes for people. So that's sort of what led me to that decision.
But you had to do that self work, right? Of figuring out, and that's not easy. After you had 30 years of your career playbook, now you're going,
No.
figuring out what you want. And I guess why I'm saying that is if that opportunity came to you without that self work, would it have been as clear?
No, not at all. And that's one of the things I hope to do with my coaching practice is really help people with those career changes at that phase, where you really don't have enough runway to make some bad decisions. You really want to figure out the best way you can what what inspires you, what excites you, what's going to be a great fit for you, and what's a process for doing that more than just let me sit with this for a day and wait for some preference to arise, you know? And so I wish that I had a little more help. That book was super helpful, but really, walking through doing that work with someone, I think would have been super helpful. And, you talk about leaders, and what are some of the problems that they face. It's very difficult to ask for help. In fact, you really, that's a double-edged sword there. So, finding a coach, um, I wish I had had one. I never had one. I think that could make a huge difference in the speed with which you make adaptations and the quality of your decision making.
No, that's really fascinating to think about. Doing the self work. Your book was the coach. You coached yourself through that situation. But if
Yeah.
you had a coach through it, maybe it would have been an easier path. And now, jumping forward, you've done the Homeland Security. You're taking that next stage of
Yeah.
going into coaching. Is that the main driver? What are you hoping to get out of that? Or there's a door behind you. Who's walking through that door that you're coaching, and what's
I thought somebody was really coming in.
no, like if someone's walking in, who are you hoping to help out there?
Oh, it's I can see the people that I've been, right? And I hope and suppose that there are more, but people that have big decisions, they don't have a lot of time for themselves. They um, have everything they need. They're successful, capable people, but they have not taken the time and they don't have someone that's both invested and not invested, right? In a way that that they can be honest back and forth and get some good input. Uh, so I see retiring senior military leaders, who are trying to make that career change. I see new executives and who are trying to make that jump from being a senior leader to an executive leader and make that move from down and in to up and out and understanding that network and their stakeholders and how to communicate with them a little better. Uh, so, I mean, I think it would be cool to help small business leaders, owners. I don't know. I feel the more I learn about coaching, the more I understand that the people that I know the best, it's probably going to be hardest for me to coach, because the whole point of coaching is that you try not to lead, you try not to diagnose. You really let people tell their own story, let people come to their own conclusions, and, let people rescue themselves, you know. And so that's where it's powerful. You know, um I have this story uh that I tell. So uh, this will take a minute, but it's a pretty good story.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So 90-year-old man falls down a stairwell on a cruise ship in the Caribbean. I'm deployed down in the Caribbean, helicopter pilot. We get called. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning. We get called to go medevac the guy. So we go pick him up and we take him to the closest airport with a runway, and we offload him and we're sending him over to get on the jet. This guy's old. He's in shock. He's in an immense amount of pain. He's not having a good day. All right. By now it's like 4 o'clock in the morning. And as they're getting ready to load him onto the airplane, he gets all frantic. He's been pretty calm, but he starts waving his hands and stuff. Flight mate from our crew comes over, plugs his headset in and says, "Sir, this guy won't get in the plane until he shakes your hand." So we shut the plane, shut the helicopter down, get out and go shake this guy's hand. And I don't remember his face really, but I remember his hand and how he held on to it, um, and, then he holds my hand, he gets on the plane and he goes on, they take him to the hospital. He lives and he does fine. I didn't, I didn't know it at the moment. I mean, it was a neat, no, it was a meaningful experience, right? That guy, you think about the life that he had lived and the things that he had been through, the Great Depression, World War II, the greatest generation, and the amount of toughness and the integrity and you know, the values of that person, that was meaningful. That sat with me for a long time. And it wasn't until a couple of years ago, I read this book, Building a Story Brand. Donald Miller. Have you heard this?
No, I haven't.
It's a great book. And it's supposed to be a marketing book, But the main thrust of the story of the book is people don't want to be rescued, right? People aren't interested in being the victim in your story. They are the heroes of their story, right? So everybody's living in their own movie,
Mm.
and they're the star. They're the hero of their own movie. So when I think about that old man, and I can 3 times in 30 years and hundreds of rescues where someone said thank you, right? That guy was one. There were 2 boys that were made to come and say thank you as punishment because they stole a kayak and took it out into a storm, and we had to go get them. And then
Right.
one guy was a rich guy on a yacht that came in and thanked the whole crew. But anyway, so when you look back on reading that book and looking back on it, going, yeah, people don't like being rescued. They're having the worst day of their life. When you show up and to bail them out, they don't. That's not. Uh, that's not who they see themselves as. Somewhat helpless. You know. So um, that that has always no, hasn't always. It became a very important part of my view of leadership and interaction, and now coaching, which is teach people to save themselves. Don't try to save them. Right? You can go in and have all the answers, but if you just give them the answers, they're going to be like, "All right, dude. Thanks a lot. Have a good day." But if they fight through their own internal blocks and find those answers for themselves, they're gonna own them, and ownership is key.
Wow. Do you see those people that thanked you? Did they take a bit of ownership in that rescue, or how do you view that? That's really powerful.
Yeah, so I think the 3 that did, one was the old guy, right? And that was just he had lived beyond his need to be the hero. He had already so the 2 lessons I take from that man was, 1, get over yourself, you know, believe that you are the hero. You don't have to be the hero every day. You've lived 90 years. You are comfortable with who you are and your self-worth. And it's not only okay, it's good to share the glory, right? Uh, and 2 is this how rare that is. How rare it is that people are comfortable enough with themselves to to recognize that it's okay that we needed to be rescued. It's not. I'm not I'm not a damsel in distress because I had a bad day. Um, so so there's that guy. There's the 2 kids that got punished and were made to come and say we're sorry. And then the one rich guy, he made a whole show out of it. He came and like brought food and reenacted his whole, well, I didn't look like this the last time you saw me, and he put on all of his old tore up clothes and he got in his raft and he did it he did it big, and so again, very, his self-worth was not challenged by the fact that he had to be rescued. So there's something there. There's something that's good for a leader to know that, when we win, they did it, my team did it. When we lose, it was my fault, right? Uh, th- that is that has to be the way that you operate, right? Or people won't trust you. Anyway, I think I'm rambling.
Not at all. No, I love
Yeah,
this. And
yeah.
I'm just trying to I can't tell you that you just tied so many dots for me. Where a chief of staff in my role, I was a chief of staff for the controllership organization at Google Cloud,
Oh,
and for a couple of years. And one of the most challenging things about the position was I get pulled in when people weren't moving fast enough. I'd be
mm,
coming to rescue. And
mm,
I don't like to brag, but I get along with people. Like I'm pretty sociable, and I understand I'm pretty human. And in that role, people stopped
Yeah.
liking me pretty fast. If you're the person coming in to do rescues, I was shocked. It's very counterintuitive, and you don't realize it unless you're in the position. And
Yeah.
those stats really just brought it home for me that
Yeah.
I thought I was helping them. Like, hey, you guys are going slow. I'm here to help you out. But I was actually their enemy. I was like, whoa, we don't need help. That's a
Yeah.
common theme that people say. It's like, why are you here? We don't need the help.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you experienced that in the most extreme ways.
Oh, yeah. Even in, personal life, people may allow you to rescue them, but they will resent it later if they have no choice. They will allow themselves to be rescued. Maybe even there's some who want to be, and you need to look out for them. But it's in relationships, I've found the same thing. It is, if you think you're rescuing them, you will eventually resent them. If they think you're rescuing them, they will eventually resent you. So there's something there. I'm sure that there's studies that I haven't looked up, but I think that it's true. And it's something that, um, maybe I don't have the words exactly right, but there is this resistance to being rescued.
And it's so powerful why you're going to coaching, right? Is you see that natural element of being human as just
Mhm.
where our attachment to our egos, or however you want to say it. And there's the
Yeah.
wise old man there that recognized, like,
Yeah.
hey, you guys are helping me out. And he actually
Yeah.
gave you credit where credit was due. And it's strange that that was so rare. But you taking that element of recognizing people have egos,
Mhm.
recognizing that there needs to be a safe space, but and working with it rather than against it. Like consulting and advising, a lot of the times I've been the consultant. It sounds like you've been in that role too, where here's the
Yeah.
thing you should do.
Yeah.
And here it's cost you $3 million to make this fancy report. You pay the firm $3 million.
Yeah.
They never do it.
Yeah.
Like, no one
Yeah.
ever follows into the deep.
Yeah.
No one wants to hear what they're doing wrong, right? So
Right. Right.
yeah, yeah.
I remember the joke used to be, when I was in the Coast Guard and we would hire these consultants. It was, a consultant is someone, what you ask them what time it is and they ask to borrow your watch. And so, uh,
That's good.
well, now I look back on it and I go, well, why the hell would you be asking them what time it is if you've got a watch? And I think there's something there too, right? It is, a lot of people don't realize they've got a watch, you know? And so as a coach, you can just say, uh, what does your watch say? Right? Uh, what time do you think it is?
Yeah. And that's going to help build that person up and breed less resentment through the process, right? You're not coming in to save them. You're teaching them and helping them along the way to save themselves.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, the whole idea is to increase self-awareness and increase personal agency. Their recognition that they can change more, they can affect more, they can do more. We can all do more than we normally think we can.
Or you said something interesting earlier. I don't know if you could elaborate just for a little bit. You said the person walking through the door, and correct me if I'm misstating this, but you said the person walking through the door would be someone who you essentially, you coaching versions of yourself, right? Things that you've been through, you
Mhm.
feel like you could help those people through. Could you give me an example, or like maybe go back into any of your experience of, wow,
Mhm.
this is when
Mhm.
a coach really would have been valuable to me, and how you would have managed that?
Yeah. Um, I mean, we talked about retiring from the military. That would have been helpful. As a new executive, that would have been helpful to really, moving from the military into a civilian position where you go into meetings with people and they're not wearing their resume on their shirt, like military. So
Yeah.
so that would have been helpful. I think, to your point, where would it have been most pivotal in my earlier career? Um, so the Coast Guard has C-130s. Okay. It's a 4-engine cargo plane.
Yeah.
And we've had 30 to 40 of those for 50 years. And so we normally, because we operate in a weird environment, we're not flying and dropping bombs and stuff, but we're low over water, which is very corrosive to the airplanes. So we have a different need to maintain the structures of those airplanes. So but we had never built a hangar large enough for us to do our own overhaul on these airplanes. So we were contracting it out. So at one point, it was my job to be responsible for these overhauls. And so we kept trying to get the Coast Guard to pay for an overhaul, pay for a new hangar. It's like $25 million or something. And this was 20 years ago. And it kept failing. It kept failing. It kept failing. And so we came up with, and I say we, it was really not me. It was the team came up with this idea where we could put a contract in place that would, through some creative contracting, result in us having a hangar built on our facility that we could do our own overhauls in. It would just be using contract labor, right? So instead of government employees, we would be using contractor employees, but we would be giving them all of the work cards. We would be managing all of the work, doing all the engineering. So we built this hangar. This is when I started to learn about up and out, right? I thought we just needed to get it done, right? I've got my team. I told my boss, we're getting it done. So you can lead, follow, or get out of the way because we're rolling down the road. We're getting it done. So we got like, I want to say $10 million from Elizabeth Dole, in North Carolina to build the ramp and stuff. And so it was big news. It wound up in the newspaper. The commandant of the Coast Guard, who's, about as far away from me at that time as it could be imagined, he reads about it in the newspaper. He is furious because he didn't know about it, right? And so now he's angry. The people underneath him that he's angry at, they're now angry. And so when we had the grand opening and all of these, from the commandant on down had replied, Lockheed Martin all of their senior leadership was there. I was a commander, which is an 05, which is not that big a deal. I was the senior Coast Guard guy there. Everybody else bailed out the morning of the event when it was going to be, when we were having the grand opening. And this is where I started to get the idea that even if you're successful, if important people aren't happy about it, right, then it's going to decrease the value of what you've done. So now all these great people that did all this amazing work, get this fantastic thing done, don't get the credit that they deserve. The building goes up. It's very successful. And once that commandant left and the next one came in, they started bringing congressional delegations down and showing how great we were doing and stuff. So it worked out. But I think if I had had a coach, during that period, that would have helped me understand about a communications plan, right? Like your communications plan can't just be, I told my boss. And literally when the commandant's yelling at me, I said, I told my boss, sir, that's dumb. It's so much bigger than that. Why didn't I get it in the paper 6 months earlier, right? Before it was already built? Why did I not make sure all of these stakeholders were engaged and on board? And I think having a coach would have helped me see that and helped me learn that lesson faster with fewer lumps and bruises.
That sounds like a harrowing experience. I'm sorry you went through
Dude,
it.
let me tell you,
Man.
right about the time the news article came out, they had one corner of the building up and we got a microburst. And so the thing blew down. And so now it's all this twisted metal. And
Oh,
I just
gosh.
thought, Oh, yeah, yeah. When I left, they gave me a picture of that twisted building, uh, but then we got it built, and they built another copy of it now, and it's doing great.
Oh, good. It reminds me I learned this too in the chief of staff role. Not building anger is nothing nearly as important, but uh, I want to tell my boss I get enough projects where hey, bosses, am I working with manure here? Like, it doesn't matter if I spread the manure, how well I spread it, I'm still going to stink at the end of the day, right? Like, can we make sure? Maybe give someone else the bag this time, Yeah.
You want me you want me to just hold this until it sprouts some flowers or something? What am I doing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I learned that lesson quick. So now sometimes it's better to say no. It doesn't matter how bad that garden needs to get built. Sometimes you just got to say, maybe I'm not the right person to hold the manure this time.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's a decision thing. So I have a daughter, she was about 18 months old, and now she's a PhD in neuroscience and teaches at Harvard. And it's one thing to think your kids are going to be smarter than you. It's another one when they prove it. But when she was 18 months old, she wasn't that bright. And so she was eating raisins, chocolate covered raisins, right? And, and, and she dropped them. They were all in the carpet, right? And this is this shag carpet. And so we start picking up the raisins out of the carpet. And so she's picking them up and eating them. And I said, no, don't eat that. No, doo-doo. I said it was doo-doo. Big mistake. Doo-doo. And so then she starts crying, right? And just losing her mind because she thinks she's eating doo-doo. And so I'm like, no, it's not doo-doo. It's not doo-doo. Look. And then I start eating it. And she goes even worse. She's like, Daddy eats the doo-doo. It was a lot easier to go from chocolate covered raisins to doo-doo than it was from doo-doo back to chocolate covered raisins in her mind. And so that's a lesson that I've taken from that.
Oh, I've learned that one. We got to be careful with your words, right? My daughter recently, just to go on daughter stories for a second, we were playing a game and she's like, hey, mommy doesn't let me do this all the time. And so I said, well, it's okay for us just to bend the rules. Just sometimes you can bend it as long as you're not hurting anybody.
Yeah.
It's okay to bend it a little bit. Oh man, I should not have said that. Anytime she breaks a rule now, she goes to mommy and said, Daddy told me it's okay to bend the rules a little bit.
That's right.
Like, oh man, dug my own grave there. Just might as well pass me a shovel,
Oh yeah.
Well, hey, wait, we're already talking. It's crazy. We've already talking for an hour. So it's time's flying by. So I'd love to take the plane to a landing, even though I'd love to talk to you for longer.
Sure.
Curious, first, where can people find you if they want to hire you? And how can my audience or myself help you with your next step into this executive coaching world?
Yeah, sure. So my website is shannonmccullar.com. And so it ends in AR. So it's MCCULLAR, shannonmccullar.com. And if you'd like to talk to me about working together, just schedule a call on there and we'll chat and see if there's anything that we might find exciting to do together. So that's it for now. I'm my website is not the best in the world, but it's getting there. I've got a place to write and store stuff now, and so I'm moving along. But it's a start.
Great. I'll put the website and I'll put your LinkedIn in the chat below, and then let's just do a fun rapid fire to launch it all off. So
all right.
Okay. So what's your favorite dessert?
Well, there's a place here that sells the best apple pie. They've got like a butter pecan crust, and man, it is good with some ice cream on it. So I'd say apple pie and ice cream.
If I'm ever out there, that's my favorite, actually. Apple pie, no joke. Yeah. Warm apple pie, and beat that with a little ice cream over cake any day. Sweet or savory?
In general,
I'd
say in general, I more savory, not sweet.
Yeah. What's your favorite leadership book?
This is aging myself here, but I just reread The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It's amazing.
Malcolm, yeah, that one's good.
Yeah, Stephen Covey. It is. It's absolutely. It's still very timely. I think it's great. Everyone should read it.
Yeah. Timeless.
Yeah.
What's the most controversial, helpful advice you've gotten?
Um, Controversial, helpful advice. Let's see. I I don't know if this is a good one. You don't have to wait 90 days in a new job to make changes, right?
That's good.
If you take a new job and um, people are screaming at each other, you don't wait 90 days to act on that. So yeah, so I'd say 90 days. Yeah, you definitely want to seek first to understand, right? But you can. There are some things you already understand and you know, and you can do before 90 days.
Yeah, that's good. What's your least favorite common saying or common piece of advice that people hand out?
Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I think that's a great beginning spot, but it's an oversimplification because what you would have them do unto you is understand what you want, and then so it's really do unto others as they want you to do unto them, right? And that takes more effort. So taking the time and especially as a leader to understand what your different people need. It's like having 4 children. All of them needed and wanted different things. For one, the worst thing you could do to him was send him to his room by himself. For the other, maybe the worst thing you could do was ground her from her phone. Right. So, but she didn't care. It didn't bother her at all to get sent to her room. So it's figuring out caring enough to notice what people really need and giving them that. And is the next level.
Yeah, it's a high bar.
Yeah.
Last one. What if you imagine you had 15 to 30 seconds to give some key advice to someone, like just a lesson, maybe a younger version of yourself that you wish you had known? And this is your stage. You got a 15-second stage. What would you say? No pressure.
Yeah. Oh, honestly, I would say, it's okay. It's okay to treat your boss like a human being. It's okay to love your boss and to treat them friendly. I I was so afraid of being seen as a suck up, that I would like I remember once a great guy said, "Hey man, you want to go get a beer?" And I'm like, "Well, is everybody getting to go?" Like I'm not I'm not trying to get ahead of these other guys. You know what I'm saying? So this fear was, and so I missed so many opportunities to be mentored and to have long-term friendships with these great human beings. Just because they're a boss doesn't, they're due I felt like they're due my loyalty, my obedience, my respect, but affection is allowed as well. I think I took more than 15 seconds, but yeah.
No, that's great. And I can confirm some of my favorite moments through my career have been drinking beers with my boss behind a building, or on top of
Yes.
the roof. Yeah. After a tough
Yeah.
job. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Shannon, I can't tell you, this was such a pleasure. I really appreciate you being on, and I'll wrap this up. I think it's a good place to close.